Hello once again and welcome back to Vote 22, UTV's coverage of the Assembly election. I'm joined in the studio now by our political editor Tracy McGee. As ever, we've also got the commentator Anna Mercer, and Sam McBride is with us from the Belfast Telegraph. And we're with you until 10 o'clock tonight with all of the latest results. Let's take a quick look now at the state of the parties. And that is the state of the parties at 9:26 on this Friday night. The DUP on 5, Sinn Féin on 16, Ulster Unionists 3, SDLP 1, and Alliance 7, and others. That's the Independent Unionist will be, that's Alex Easton, that's 1. Now, it's looking like a successful election for the TUV. And the TUV has seen its vote share almost quadruple since 2017. Party leader Jim Allister joins me now. Mr. Allister, what's your assessment of the performance of the TUV in this election?
Well, the TUV is the only unionist party that has increased, and indeed increased significantly, our share of the vote. Unfortunately, it hasn't translated into a corresponding number of seats. And it's an interesting parallel that in 2017, the Alliance Party had 7.7% of the vote and captured 8 seats. TUV has 7.6% of the vote and will capture at most 2 seats. So I think that does show you the...
Are you ruling out any gains for the TUV in that case? Are you ruling out any gains?
Sorry?
Are you ruling out any gains for the TUV?
Well, we're in a situation where no, we're certainly still in the mix in Strangford, and I'm hopeful that we're going to lift a seat there. We've been very close and had some very disappointing close races where we have lost out. But the significant thing is that I now speak for 65,000 people across the country. Those are 65,000 people who are very clear that whatever the DUP does, it must be compatible with the fact that this is an unbearable protocol because it decrees and operates on the basis that GB is a foreign country. That's unacceptable.
Mr. Allister,
and I will be holding the DUP. I will be holding the DUP's feet to the fire.
You know
as
well as I do that there's more than one side in this election. Sinn Féin looks set to be returned as the biggest party in the Assembly, with Michelle O'Neill set to be the First Minister. The voters have spoken. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that unionism should thwart and block a Sinn Féin First Minister. The DP now has a choice. Are they going to be Sinn Féin's bridesmaid, or all their MLAs going to be their flower girls and page boys, ushering the coronation of Sinn Féin as First Minister? Or is unionism going to make a strategic reflection on whether Stormont is any longer in the interests of unionism? Because I think we've reached that point where unionism does need to seriously ask the
Jim
question.
Allister, you know that this is a democracy. You know this is a democracy, and you know that you cannot have it all your own way.
Sorry, this is not a democracy, because yesterday no one was able to vote a party out of government. No one was able to change their government because of the absurdity of mandatory coalition. There's nowhere else in the world where a party winning 25 or 26 seats, 25 or 26% of the vote would be entitled as of right. There's no place in the world where someone winning 8-9% of the vote would be entitled as of right to a place in government. The electorate would have the opportunity to vote them out, but not here because of the absurdity of mandatory coalition. So unionism does need to decide. Are they going to be Sinn Féin's bridesmaid? Are they going to allow a party that doesn't even want Northern Ireland to exist
you will know as well as I do, Mr. Allister.
And I think there is a strategic decision for unionism to be taken.
But it's a decision that will have to be made, obviously, by more than just the unionists. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us tonight and giving us your view of the election thus far. Thank you very much indeed, Jim Allister. Now, Tracy, you're hearing that. Just while we're here, we've got results, some declarations. Stuart Dixon and Danny Donnelly, both elected in East Antrim, and Harry Harvey elected for the DUP in Strangford.
Yeah, and we've known for quite some hours now that the Alliance Party looked like it was going to take another seat in East Antrim. They had targeted that seat and they have done well to get it. Harry Harvey coming in Strangford, well, it's a seat. I think the difficulty for the DUP is certainly in terms of recognisability. Peter Weir would be the candidate that they would have liked to have held on to, but no surprises in that. Interesting to listen to Jim Allister, because what we're seeing is, okay, in terms of seats, Jim looks like he's going to be coming in with maximum one more seat, but he has galvanised a vote there. His vote has gone up by 5%. At the same time, the DUP vote is going down by 6%. He is speaking for people within the unionist community, and he cannot be ignored.
Sam McBride, he didn't do much to instill unionist unity, though, did he?
No, but he has managed, as has been the case for many years, but to a greater degree here, to influence unionist politics and influence wider politics in a way that goes way beyond his immediate voter base. I think that this is an extraordinary outcome for unionism because it is shrinking here quite significantly at a much faster rate than nationalism is shrinking. Both are shrinking to a certain extent, but unionism is in much deeper trouble as an ideology, and it is hardening its attitude, moving quite decisively here towards Jim Allister and towards hardline unionism. And even those who stay with the DUP are staying with the DUP, which has become much more hardline, which has walked out of government. The more liberal Ulster Unionist Party here has really been decimated in many ways.
So we're not talking about an accommodation with the other side in that case?
I really don't see any basis for a government being formed for months, possibly at all. I think there's a big temptation here for the DUP to push for another election, to deliberately not go into government, to not even nominate a speaker, or sorry, to block a speaker next week from even allowing the Assembly to function, and trying to force the Secretary of State to call a second
What would
vote.
another election achieve?
Well, exactly. I mean, if the system has to change, if we're going to see anything move on this, I think that, I mean, it was interesting to hear from Jim about how he is kind of, I think, pleased to a certain extent that he has increased his vote, but disappointed that it hasn't translated into seats. But I mean, you know, Sinn Féin have 200,000 votes more than him. He's sitting on 65,000, which is great. It's an increase for him. But, you know, with all the will in the world, you can't just wish away nationalism and its aspirations. We're in a system which has to accommodate two different constitutional ideologies. So, I mean, Good Friday Agreement potentially does need a bit of a facelift, but what's Jim's alternative? He's talking about, you know, he doesn't like a mandatory coalition, but what solutions is he putting on the table, and where's the space to discuss it? Because at the minute it's just shouting from the sidelines, and if he's going to be taken seriously, he needs to put some solutions forward, because we do need a government of some description.
Indeed, but what is a facelift going to look like, and who's going to decide it, and where will the conversation take place, and between whom?
Well, there is a mechanism, a review mechanism within the Northern Ireland Act in 1998. There's an opportunity to have those conversations. We need to stop having them in a crisis. Every time something goes wrong, people get together, it's a pressure cooker environment, and it becomes sort of a trade-off situation. We need to actually have these conversations outside of that heat, and really think about, what does Northern Ireland look like in 2022? What about the rise of the other here? And does designation still apply, or is that just institutionalised and sectarianised?
Well, these are conversations that will obviously come to the fore over the next few days, but it hasn't been a great day at the office for the DUP, has it? They've suffered a 7% drop in first preference votes and look set to lose the top spot at Stormont to Sinn Féin. I'm joined now by the DUP leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson from Jordanstown. Mr Donaldson, given the Sinn Féin figures so far, did your tactics backfire and stimulate the nationalist community here?
Good evening, Paul from Jordanstown. No, I don't think that is the case. I think the problem here is rather that unionism is divided. And I think the message out of this election is that a divided unionism doesn't deliver extra seats, and unionism won't win elections when it is so divided. And I think the DUP vote has held up remarkably well when you consider some commentators were talking about meltdown. It's only a short time ago that the polls were predicting us on, 16%. Even last week we were supposedly vying for second place with Alliance on 18%. We've defied those predictions, and here in Lagan Valley we had 18,000 first preference votes, a remarkable result with both our candidates returned.
Okay, Sir Geoffrey, we've seen the figures. Now, there are points that I need to raise with you tonight. You say the protocol prevents you entering the executive, but to the outside world and to nationalists, you just won't share power with them. Isn't that the case?
Well, Paul, that's not the case, and that's what we've been doing now for a number of years. But unionism does not support the protocol, and I think if you look at the election results, that is absolutely evident. And if other parties continue to ignore that, and we are expected to operate where there is not a consensus, where the protocol is undermining political stability, harming our economy.
Right.
It contributes to driving up the cost of living. We're not prepared to ignore that, Paul.
OK, well, fine. Let's presume that come Monday, if the issues that are stopping you from going into government are miraculously resolved, and Sinn Féin is the largest party, will you enter an executive or not?
Well, look, Paul, we're I think, jumping ahead of us. I think that
by
there
the
are
way, not too
discussions
far.
that need to be had with the government. Well, let's see. I haven't certainly heard that the government is going to make some big announcement on Monday about the protocol. It is the Queen's speech on Tuesday, so we'll see what the government says there. But look, words are not enough, Paul. Let me be clear about that. I said it during the election, and indeed I said it to you on The View from Stormont. It's not words. We need action. We need decisive action from the government. Last July, almost 12 months ago,
how do you
they
sell
told us
that?
they were going to
How
take
do you
action.
sell that to the people who can't put bread on the table or heat their homes?
Well, we want to deliver support to those people. Of course we do. I recognise that the cost of living is impacting on many households across Northern Ireland. But Paul, I'm not going to be diverted from the reality. I warned people that the first speech Mary Lou McDonald would make would be focused on a date for a border poll. And what have we just heard this evening? She's now demanding a date for a border poll within the next 5 years. She's not talking about the cost of living. She's not talking about fixing the NHS.
Look, can I ask you
we
one?
are.
Sir
And
Jeffrey,
we want to do that.
One final quick question: yes or no? Will you nominate a speaker next week?
Well, my party officers will meet early in the week. We're going to look at all of those decisions, Paul. I want Stormont to work, but I am absolutely clear. The long shadow of the protocol is undermining political stability. It needs to be dealt with. Tuesday will be a key moment. Let's see what the government have to say. But more than that, we need decisive action. The sooner the government acts, the sooner we'll have a functioning executive.
Sir Jeffrey,
that's what we need.
Sir Jeffrey Donaldson, thank you very much indeed. I'm just wondering, Sam McBride, what comfort the DUP will get from Boris Johnson.
Well, in the televised debates, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson was quite bullish about this, was quite dismissive of people who said, why are you trusting this Prime Minister? Now we're going to see that. But I think that there was, in Sir Jeffrey's words there, a lack of an ability to confront reality here. This is not a good election result for the DUP. It's a disastrous result. The fact that it's not quite as disastrous as the polls suggested it might have been last year doesn't in any way suggest that this is a good result. And yet he seems to be saying that this is the fault of other people. It's unionism that's divided. It's not his fault. It's not the DUP's fault. They, if they're going to fix this, need to confront their own role in the problems in unionism's decline over recent years.
If there is one light at the end of the tunnel, for the moment anyway, for Ulster Unionism, it is that Steve Aiken has been elected in South Antrim.
And I'm sure they'll be pleased about that, but they will be concerned, I think, about how their leader, Doug Beattie, is doing in Upper Bann. The fact that we're even talking about the fact that he may be in some sort of a tussle for his seat, I think that speaks volumes.
And Anna Mercer, I mean, it's still all to play for at one level, but at another level, everybody is still shouting at each other across the chasm.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think really struck me about Jeffrey. It's very defensive. Everyone's kind of, trying to, certainly on the unionist side at the minute, it's very much in not wanting to concede anything, and there's, talk about unionist unity he was talking about earlier as well. I think we need to stop the whole sort of attack and listen. Move to the listening mode. I mean, you made the point about cost of living. There are other issues out there. Unionist unity and the, unionism as an ideology isn't going to fix that. So maybe a bit of time for reflection before we get.
And look for the common ground that exists, not least the land that we populate in Northern Ireland. We're going to take another short break now, but do come back and we'll have more results and analysis in a few moments.